Tulsi Gabbard reveals deep state operative James Clapper's Russia hoax wasn't his first intel scab. He manufactured the WMD lie that led to the Iraq war. This dude is just a despicable person to the highest order. James Clapper was the reason why we went into Iraq and killed a million Iraqis over some fake weapons of mass destruction. We all remember that. And James Clapper was actually the one behind it. That is crazy. And he's the one behind the Russia hoax. This dude, I hope, gets put under the prison because he's a despicable individual. So we're going to talk a little bit about him. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my X account, so follow me there as well. All right, let's get into this news. Now, this comes from the Gateway Pundit, and they report that Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard accused former Obama DNI James Clapper of being a serial political manipulator, exposing that the Russia collusion hoax wasn't his first rodeo in deception. Gabbard unloaded on disgraced former DNI James Clapper during her appearance on the Pod Force One podcast with Miranda Devine of the New York Post. Gabbard is accusing the longtime deep state operator of not one, but two of the most catastrophic, catastrophic intelligence failures in modern American history. The phony weapons of mass destruction narrative that dragged the U.S. into a forever war in Iraq, and the sham Russia collusion hoax used to undermine President Donald Trump. Now, was it a failure? The whole WMD thing, it wasn't a failure. This was by design. They made the whole thing up, I believe. The weapons of mass destruction narrative refers to the false claims made by the U.S. government, primarily under President George W. Bush and his administration, that Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq possessed active weapons of mass destruction programs, including chemical, biological, and potentially nuclear weapons. Vice President Dick Cheney, another despicable human being, secretly of Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, CIA Director George Tenet, and National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice were central in pushing the WMD case. Then Secretary of State Colin Powell, I've actually met him back when I was a kid. I was a youth conference I went to, and he was there. But famously presented the WMD case before the United Nations in February 2003 using satellite photos and intercepts that later turned out to be deeply flawed or outright false. And it's a shame because it tarnished Colin Powell's legacy, man. At the time, Clapper was the Director of National Intelligence Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, responsible for analyzing satellite imagery and other geospatial intelligence. The NGA's assessment of potential Iraq WMD sites contributed to the overall intelligence community's conclusion that Iraq has such weapons. To this day, we still never discovered any WMDs, right? Clapper later conceded that the intelligence community's assessment was wrong, described it as building a house of cards based on faulty assumptions that ultimately led to the conclusion that WMDs were present when they weren't. Quote, "My fingerprints are on the infamous National Intelligence Assessment of October 2002, he said during a 2018 event promoting his book, Facts and Fears, at GW Jack Morton Auditorium. Quote, "The intelligence community built a case in our own minds, a house of cards, it turned out, that led us to the conclusion with pretty high confidence that they were there, and it turns out they weren't," he added. No. What happened was they went in with trying to find weapons and weapons of mass destruction rather than looking at the intelligence and seeing like they wanted to find weapons of mass destruction when there was none. That was the case there. Quote, "It represented closure for the country and closure for the intelligence community, and certainly personal closure. It was certainly a profound event, and I will never forget it," he said. You despicable scumbag. I really like James Clapper, Brennan, all of them guys. I really have a deep, deep disdain for them because their whole thing, their whole motto is basically to deceive the American public. It's disgusting. But let's listen to what Tulsi Gabbard has to say about it. Here we go. Here's the clip.
James Clapper was on the team that created, that manufactured intelligence assessment that led to the Iraq war, about the Iraq WMDs. He writes about it in his book, saying that he and his team of intelligence analysts created something that was not there. When you look at his actions then, and you look at his actions in 2016 as Obama's director of national intelligence, you see someone who has no problem whatsoever politicizing and manufacturing and weaponizing intelligence for a political outcome.
Ridiculous, right? Again, I have a deep disdain for those individuals because they lie to the American people to try to push their own agenda. They are the deep state. Because think about it. How do you make something a mistake that big? I'm talking about Clapper. Make a mistake that big that we end up going to war over it, and you get promoted. You get promoted behind it. That's our government. They promote people, and supposedly it was a mistake, right? No, he got promoted because he did the bidding of the deep state. That's why he got promoted. That's why he ended up in the Obama administration. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Leave y'all comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.